Good afternoon and evening, Sharpies, and welcome to Steel, Sharp, and Steel. I'm Tom Cunningham.
I'm Joy Stevens.
I'm Jermaine Taylor.
And
I'm Mark Bachner. Good to meet you.
Hello, Mark Bachner. Some of you may recognize Mark from his copious comments over the last several episodes, and so he is a friend of Jermaine, and Jermaine reached out to him, and so Mark has agreed to be on the show. Thank you for joining us today, Mark.
Absolutely.
And see there, Sharpies? Sorry, what'd you say, Mark?
I said my pleasure.
And see there, Sharpies? It's just that easy to become a guest on the show. We've been talking to y'all for a minute. Y'all getting in here being keyboard warriors, and we're like, come to the show, and it's just like,
Fairy tales do come true. It can happen to you if you want to be a Sharpie. So, hello, Anthony Turner. He says, I will brook no fools. I am on my A game. I'm going to be number one in the comments again. So thank you, Anthony, for picking up the ball.
Number 1, 2, and 3 in the comments
today. He's killing the game. And we are indeed in the home stretch. We are literally, ladies and gentlemen, we are literally like 13 days. We are 13 days out, which is nuts. Which means right now you have, well, I think it's 12 days actually now. You have 12 days to early vote, to bank your votes, make sure that you are getting your votes tabulated and cast, unless, of course, you live in Arizona where a guy tried to set fire to a post office mailbox to damage or destroy votes. Guess which side he was on. Thank you, Mark Stepney. We love you for voting in Missouri. Let's hope that that one vote is enough to tip the state.
You never know. You never know.
We may get that Senate seat.
Yeah, exactly.
We might get that Senate seat. It's in play.
That's Hawley, right?
What's that? That's Josh Hawley's
seat.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need that seat because he's trash. And it would be wonderful.
Exactly.
How much of them are trash?
Well, that's true. Almost everyone with an R behind their name is complete trash, although Susan Collins is trash adjacent, I would say. She's probably more like recycling.
She's light refuse. Yes.
Composting, maybe. Thank you, Anthony. We love you for voting. This is the message. One of the big existential questions, I think, this year, and I'm going to toss to you, Joy, because you've got the 2 X chromosomes. Why is it this close between a very capable sitting vice president and a person whose brain possibly can be seen dribbling out of his ears at any given time? Why is this race even a coin toss right now?
You described it wrong. This is not a race between a very capable former district attorney turned senator with multiple qualifications and a convicted felon with no redeeming qualities. This is a race between a black man and a black woman and a white man. This and a lot of people's unconscious bias is showing. And I actually had this conversation with a white woman on Friday, as a matter of fact. We were talking about bias, and she's like, well, I don't really have a lot of bias because, I am part of a minority group. And I was like, you have bias.
Yeah.
Which, of course, it all devolved from that. But by the time we got to that point, I was sick of her anyway. So I had stopped being protective of people's sensibilities, and I just thought, but the smoke came out. And the way I spoke to her, I said, look, everyone in the United States has bias, including even black women. And we're all biased against gender from a patriarchal standpoint and against race based on the status that your race maintains in a social hierarchy that was created to support white supremacy. Even black women have biases, ironically, against black women, because we also understand a pecking order, and everyone tends to do things that protect themselves. So we grow up in an environment that biases according to that order. So even men can have biases against other men of color. And the more, what am I trying to say? The more endangered your status is, the more likely you are to come out to denigrate another one just to try to make yourself look better to another. But the funny thing about that is you cannot hate me enough to make them like you.
Right.
What you do, you're still going to be subservient to or subordinate to that other group that's always going to look down on you, because no matter what you do, they're going to remember that you are not them. And you can look down. And so the best thing to do is for all of us to gather together and turn them into this smaller number, but they never think of it that way. You know, so to answer your question, it's never, bye, sweetie. Bye, I love you. That's my goddaughter.
Hey, goddaughter.
Hi. She just got her blue coat. She is a chiropractor, and so she gave me an adjustment today.
Oh, awesome.
You can come out to LA, goddaughter. Hello.
I would love to. We'll chat.
Okay.
Don't play with her money. She will be out there. But that's why it's close, because there are so many people that don't want to look at merit, you know, in this meritocracy that we live in. That's why it's close, because we're not looking at merit. We're looking at bias and people that don't want to admit that they have a bias. And you can just say you don't like her. I had another conversation with a friend of mine. Actually, he's one of my favorite people in the city. And it got to the point where I almost wanted to punch him in the face. And forgive me for the very crude things that I'm about to say, but it turned into, you know, he's like, well, I just don't know her and her vibe is all blah, blah, blah. I was like, dude, you ain't got to fuck her. You just got to vote for her.
Yeah.
That's where it got down to.
Yeah.
And that
She doesn't have to be perfect. She just needs to be better than Trump.
Exactly. But that's what made him realize what he was doing. He was like, God damn, Joy. I mean, yeah, you got a point, but I shouldn't have had to say that to make a point.
So, Mark, I want to flip to you, just because this is going to be your first opportunity to actually make a trenchant comment on in person, live on Steel Sharpens Steel. When you think about the persons with whom you're interacting with on a day-to-day basis, do you have a lot of encounters like Joy just outlined, where you're encountering people who are expressing that they have these hard to quantify challenges with Harris, or they just feel that Trump is okay or better or more qualified? Is that something that you're experiencing as well?
Well, I'm more of a progressive, so I don't have a lot of contact with Trumpers per se. But I will say that the progressives that are holding out, and it's not a huge number, it's all Israel genocide, Palestine, 100%. To some extent, they'll go back to 2020 and the primary against Bernie, but primarily they're not even looking to vote for Trump. They're either going to sit it out or they're going to vote for Jill Stein. But I still don't think that's going to be a real big number.
Hopefully it won't swing any. Hopefully it won't be enough in the swing states. I'm hoping that the people that are in the swing states understand the swinginess of their vote and don't decide to exercise that power in a destructive way. You know, swing all you want in Texas. You know.
Well, also swing all you want in the primary. Swing all you want in local elections. I don't care. Run. If there's a Green Party person running for comptroller or a city commissioner or your local state assembly person, whatever, do whatever you want. The thing that annoys me about Jill Stein in particular is that, I don't know if everybody read the article this week, she literally understands that she is trying to deny a win in these states to Kamala Harris.
Right.
Knowing that there's no way for her to win, knowing that there's no way for there to be a better policy position when supposedly she's advocating for these great and high ideals, knowing that there's no way for that to be possible, she is just in there trying to destroy Kamala Harris's chances, to the extent that she is being funded and supported by the GOP, which she is not admitting, but she is being funded and supported by the GOP because they know that Jill Stein pulls exclusively from Kamala Harris's generalized pool of voters. I think Michigan is not going to fall prey to the same trick that they fell prey to in 2016. I mean, Joe Biden is partial evidence of that. And there are some encouraging things to be said about the early vote numbers, particularly in Detroit, which is obviously the biggest voting block that there is in the entire state. Gretchen Whitmer has been excellent on the stump for her. And she, unlike, we talked about this last week, Mark, as you recall, unlike the Trump campaign, Kamala Harris has lots of proxies.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
She's got white men proxies. She's got past President Barack Obama proxies. She's got Liz Cheney proxies. She's got, this governor proxies. All of these people are unified on the team. Trump basically has himself and JD Vance and Elon Musk.
Right.
Yeah.
And apparently the ghost of Arnold Palmer's penis, even
Yeah.
though Arnold Palmer's daughter says that Arnold Palmer hated Trump.
Oh yeah, did not like him. Thought he was
At all.
weaselly, couldn't be trusted. I mean, if you think about Trump, he's always trying to talk up who he knows, like he's this big celebrity. So that was the whole point of bringing up Arnold Palmer. I think when it devolved into penis talk, that was his cognitive decline.
Yeah.
That was his dementia kicking in, and he lost track of what he was saying, and he'd probably joked about that in the past, and it just fell out of his mouth.
Yeah.
Locker room talk.
Did you just say Arnold Palmer's penis fell out of his mouth?
Yeah.
I'm just checking.
Penis talk coming to season 5 of Steel Sharpens Steel.
But was that known knowledge before he even brought that up? Because I had never heard that. And when he said
Because
that,
nobody ever cared.
I know.
Ever cared.
But I bet Google searches for that was off the charts. I
Right.
think I'm lying.
What kind of golf for locker rooms is he even referencing?
Since when do you go to the locker room and golf? You go home.
Are you
Well, I mean,
serious?
if it's
There's
at the
no
club,
group showers at a golf club. What are they talking about?
I'm certain no one ever said that about Donald Trump's little Donald.
Yeah.
Oh
in the
yeah,
locker
his
room.
little mushroom.
Right.
Yeah.
little straw mushroom.
What I'm finding, what they're doing with Kamala is what they've done with Black women throughout history. They're putting the entire world on her. Every issue that they have, be it immigration, be it the economy, be it whatever it is that they're a single issue running on, it's all of a sudden incumbent upon her to give them a step-by-step plan as to how it's going to be done. She doesn't have the luxury of just proposing what she wants to do and giving bullet points. That's not enough. It's word salad all of a sudden.
Right.
So,
meanwhile, he's got a concept of a plan.
Yeah. So she's not going to win even if she gives you bullet points on a freaking PowerPoint presentation. She's not going to. And that's even a problem with us. I even heard Van Jones say something today, or maybe it was last night, how he mentioned that, he slightly gets irritated by her word salad, how she doesn't always come through with the specifics. And I was thinking, has anyone ever really come through with the specifics when they're stumping for their, for their particular platform? And they haven't. But we're just so conditioned to wanting everything out of our sisters. Why? Because they have given us everything. So it's a catch-22.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the weird thing, if I may, the weird thing about, actually, I lost my train of thought.
I
was just going to say that the thing about Kamala Harris to me, just because I and the rest of you, I'm sure, are in like this constant cycle of always seeing clips and always seeing little reels and always seeing stuff. To me, I, as a person who knows what her positions are, it gets a little tired for me to hear her, and it's time to turn the page.
Yeah.
Or, he's a fascist, or we've got to when we fight, we win. It's like the slogans I just hear so often now,
Right.
but I know she's talking to different audiences who haven't necessarily been exposed to it.
Exactly.
And so I get it. But just for me, as a person who's like literally sitting with my phone in my hand 24/7, waking up to look at the Midas touch and be like, wait, what did she do? What did she say? And it's the same thing kind of over and over again.
We had that same thing with Bernie Sanders in 2016 and 2020. He's talking all policy, just policy, but it's the same policies using almost all the same words and the same examples every time.
Yeah.
And on the flip side, Trump has done this to the political world. He's given us such a sensationalized show. That's what we're expecting from just about anyone who's in front of us nationally. We want something that's going to excite us. And when we have gotten back to the way of politics of yesteryear before him, it's kind of dull. It's boring. We pick it apart. We're not gaslit. We can't run with the soundbite because they're not offering anything.
Right.
So I feel like he sort of like introduced this whole new showbiz to it that a lot of us, and I'm even guilty of it, have a hard time adjusting to when we have a traditional politician on the scene.
Go ahead, Joy.
There's more to it than that. Like when we talk about discussing policy and sharing your ideas, etc. There's a record that is immutable now because everything is on the internet, and not just reporters. Mm-hmm. Anybody with a TV and a phone can go back and say, "No, you said this." It's mm-hmm. different from the age of, say, like Nixon, and even Reagan, like where it may have been reporters. You could always grab them, pull them to the side, and say, "Hey, delete that. I didn't mean that," or "Don't let this tape get out." There was some control that you had over the narrative that was going to the general public. And now everything is simulcast, is no control. You make one mistake, think about Tim Walz when he said, I'm friends with school shooters. You know good and hell well he didn't mean that.
He meant the victims.
Right. Yeah. But that sits out there and everything can be a mistake. So if you say, I'm going to give, 100 million to education, 100 million is not a number, and now they're like, oh, she's lying because that's not even real. It's so easy to make an immutable mistake that it's better to just say, this is my plan, and talk about a few things and have those solid to where it becomes muscle memory for you to say it, than to try to dig into something more significant and potentially, like, remember when Barack Obama was saying that he was going to close Gitmo, and then he never did it. That is still hanging over his head. Like, hey, bro,
sure is.
Open the door. Like, I thought she was going to do it, but what happened with that? And it becomes something that people absolutely will use against her later.
Well, now, the interesting thing is, all of that is held. The Democrats are held to account on that. Republicans are not.
And that is also
because she has to talk about policy. He never talks about policy. He just talks about who he hates, how he thinks he's been cheated, and who he's going to go after. And then they come back with, she's not giving her plans. She's not being clear. Mm-hmm. Well, she's the only one talking policy. Now let's go back to previous campaigns, because I've been doing these campaigns since the 90s. Mm-hmm. And you look at the previous ones, what was the gripe against John Kerry? He over-explained everything. He got too much into the weeds. They said the same about Hillary, that she didn't touch people at the heart level. She just was policy.
And didn't they call John Kerry a flip-flopper because he changed his mind about something one time?
Yeah, and you're allowed to change your mind. When you get new information, you're allowed to change your mind.
But can we get back to the fact that a lot of people credited Clinton's loss with her saying deplorables. Deplorables upset the apple cart. And that, plus the fact that she didn't visit some of the swing states that she needed to visit to close and kind of push Jill Stein out.
And she wouldn't send Bernie for those either. Bernie offered to go to those blue wall states, and she said, you'll go where I tell you.
And, well, I mean, I had a lot of challenges with Clinton as a candidate. I voted for her, of course, because there was no way I was going to vote for Trump. But that sense of entitlement didn't sit well with me. Not that she was a woman, because she could do the job. I didn't have a problem with her doing the job. I did think that her husband goosed her up, like, we're Clintons, baby. You got this. And it ended up not working out that way. But
it didn't look like a slam dunk. You're up against a buffoon. At the time, it seemed like he was the easiest one to beat out of everyone that the Republicans could have put up. It looked that way. And so I could see how she might have started maybe coasting through the end of that race. Like, there's no way I'm going to lose to this idiot. Oh my God, what has happened? And even with everything that was going on, there's still that issue of Comey with that late surprise a couple of days before the election.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That threw a lot of people into turmoil, so because they were looking for a reason, again, for the bias, looking for a reason to go, see, I knew I couldn't trust her, right?
I have a different take on what happened with Hillary. And you may not like this.
Go for it.
So I thought, just like Trump was the least electable, I thought Hillary was the least electable in the general. I thought she was the one most likely to get through a primary, and she was the least electable in the general because of the blue wall. Everyone knew the blue wall was her challenge, and it was her challenge because of the Clintons and the free trade agreements had wiped out all of those jobs in the Midwest and the Rust Belt. So she was going into that election with that challenge. His only path to a victory ran through her as his opponent. Now, that's not to dismiss what Joyce said. She was running against the clown. She was running against the clown, and he was running against corruption.
And the thing is that I feel like a lot of Democratic voters in 2016, and I want to jump back to 2024, but a lot of Democratic voters in 2016 held a principled, I'm a Bernie person voter stance. And were like, well, she's got it. I'm not going to contribute to her win because I don't believe in her win. And I think she's probably good. If they had known in retrospect, hindsight being 2020, I think a lot of those Bernie bros and Bernie
combined with the Jill Stein thing.
Right.
I think they would have gone on ahead and done it if they knew that Trump would win. I think that hesitancy, that sitting at home that you referred to before, Mark, is a real problem that I want to avoid this time, because there is no sitting at home. The bottom line is, and we talked about this at least for the past 2 weeks, if you were a person who is writing on Palestinian rights, you've got to know that Donald Trump is on tape saying that the Israelis should just mow down northern Gaza.
Way worse.
There is no Palestinian rights. At least you have a person in Kamala Harris who is committed to working on a solution, a stated two-state solution, an articulated two-state solution where the Palestinians have a right to dignity and life. That is not something that is even out of Trump's, unlike Arnold Palmer's penis, out of Trump's mouth.
Hang on. Sadita just put the Tubi. Because you know who Tubi's demographic is. Tubi is taking all of Trump's PAC money to run ads targeting black people nonstop with Kamala ain't shit type ads. Wow. And I think it's working too. Because
it doesn't Fox own Tubi?
Say what?
Doesn't Fox own Tubi?
They probably do. I don't know, but I know who watches Tubi. The guy that I told you was like, I don't like Kamala's vibe, watches Tubi. So
we
that's
can go pick it out front of their corporate offices. They're in walking distance. I'm not kidding. They're right here in Hollywood.
Okay.
I'm down. I'm serious.
Now, I mean, the media is another issue. For starters, there's a problem with Trump attacking them on the regular, because we do need a media. But we need to re-regulate that media. That needs to be something we push Harris to do. She has the deregulation that came from first Reagan and then from Clinton. They need to be re-regulated. Fact checking should not be optional.
Right.
We need local news to be owned by local ownership again. None of these like multi-billionaires controlling all the narratives, buying up all the media. I mean, you take a look, a story came out today, even the LA Times. One of the women at the LA Times said that they were about to endorse Kamala, and they were told by the ownership no, because the owner's a billionaire.
Yeah. The mobilization of that group that the Tubi people are targeting, I don't worry as much, and I hate to kind of like, denigrate them a little bit, but it takes a lot to get them to do anything civic minded to begin with. I just don't put much faith in them all of a sudden taking all this negative information they've heard about Kamala and I'm going to vote against her. I feel like if anything, they can just amplify that message for the most part, keyboard assassins. But I just don't see them just having such a huge numbers going to the polls and shifting the momentum out of her favor. I just don't.
I mean, from your lips to God's ears, I'd certainly be happy if that turns out to be true. Mm-hmm. I am concerned. It's like on the one side, I see lots of positive movement in Florida and North Carolina. If Florida and North Carolina go, it's a wrap. Like he can't lose Florida at all. Yeah. If she gets Florida, she can lose Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I mean, that would be amazing if that turns out to be the case. And it's very inspiring to me to see all of these rallies and to see that DeSantis is having trouble and to see that the hurricane stuff is turning into a boondoggle and kind of, whatever Trump was trying to do does not appear to actually be connecting with a whole lot of people. If it is connecting with anybody, it's connecting with the Trumpers who are already in his pocket. I don't see him really converting people with his lies about the assistance. And there are people who are literally dying by listening to his lies and not applying for FEMA. I heard a heartbreaking story about a man whose father-in-law would not apply for FEMA funds because Trump told him that if you apply for FEMA funds, they own your house.
Yeah.
And
Crazy.
so he didn't want to do it. And so this is kind of where we are in terms of the landscape right now. We've got a lot of people who are tragically misinformed. We have a GOP candidate whose creamsicle brain is liquefying before our eyes. And Joy has a point.
I've got a question about that. The whole First Amendment thing. There is that whole you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. If Trump is saying things that we can directly tie to someone losing their life, isn't that the grounds for some sort of, I don't know, slap him with some sort of either civil lawsuit or criminal negligence or whatever, when knowing the platform he has and that you've said this thing that is patently untrue and that it is directly related to someone losing their life, there has to be some level of responsibility for that.
Not in 12 days.
But they start to pretzel themselves into justification. Maybe a little bit later down the line, but right now in the media, I don't think there's anything can happen because they can just attribute that to him. Just
at what point do we stop saying he's just playing? Because he ain't been playing this whole time.
No, he hasn't.
He's meant everything.
And that's the interesting point, Joy, because people who laugh at the Arnold Palmer jokes, people who look at him very badly cooking French fries at McDonald's in a stunt, that gets headlines when him talking about the enemy within and turning the U.S. military on United States citizens doesn't get that same sort of traction. Although it has been only recently that some of the mainstream media is actually picking up on some of these problems he's having. Standing on stage for 40 minutes, dancing to Ave Maria and YMCA, and, just literally standing on stage looking crazy.
Are any of the Village people alive? I feel like they should tell him he can't use that.
I mean, stop it. Just let it go. Don't ever do it again.
The Indian guys left?
The Indian guy's still alive, yeah.
He should be out there picking in on that. But
he did Sweet November Rain in no air conditioning. They were all passing out because they had no air conditioning.
No air conditioning.
Sweet November Rain.
I mean, let's take a pause, because I would like to talk about my next favorite GOP nightmare, which is Mark Robinson. So as we discussed last week, this is going to be quick. It's going to be quick. So last week, as we discussed, Mark Robinson filed a $50 million lawsuit against CNN about all of this stuff that supposedly he was going to sue them about. Interestingly enough, his 14-page lawsuit did not offer any evidence to counter the research that CNN had done. So yesterday, turns out in a filing, he has downgraded the scope of the suit to ask for a lesser amount. So, show of hands, how many people think that he cut it in half to a $25 million lawsuit? Sharpies, you can put comments in the chat too. Okay, so no takers on 25 million. How about going from 50 to 10 million? How about that? Anybody?
$1.
1 million? Oh, okay. So Joy's playing The Price is Right. Joy picked $1. Okay, Jermaine, what do you think he lowered his ask for in the lawsuit?
I would say $1 million lawsuit. $1 million.
Okay, Mark.
I have absolutely no idea.
Well, just play along, Mark. Give me a guess.
Pretend to understand what goes on in that head. I mean, I think their play is if Trump wins, their lawsuits go through. If Trump loses, then their lawsuits get killed. So I think he may actually keep it high. I think he might keep it high.
No, $25,000 from 50 million to 25,000.
So he just wants to be able to say he won,
what they're guessing. Oh, he's not going to win anyway.
or just say that
not
he
going to
filed, just to say it's been filed.
Well, right. Well, he had already said it's been filed. The problem is, and of course, the lawsuit isn't set to even start until after the election. Two things. One, he's got all this fun. He's got this money that he's raised. If he is forced to defend a lawsuit, all of the money that he has raised for his campaign is going to be consumed by the lawsuit. He's just not going to have anything left. There's no way he's going to win, because the first thing that's going to happen is discovery, and he doesn't have any way to demonstrate that that stuff isn't his. All you got to do is look at the IP addresses. You were on a porn site, my bro.
Right. Mark Robinson is freak.org. Come on, bro.
Correct. You were tagged every time you posted on there. They got your IP address. And you can say they went back in time 12 years ago and spoofed your IP address when you weren't a candidate just for giggles and made all these outlandish statements, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of posts just to get you 15 years later. But when they find out the call's coming from within your house, the lawsuit's over, and you are going to get hit with malicious prosecution and damages and everything else. So
why not just drop the lawsuit altogether?
Well, he can't drop it now because saving face. He never should have filed it. But now that he has filed it, he's at least got to wait until the election is over and he's trounced by 25, 30 points. Yeah. And then he can just quietly go away because nobody will be looking at him. And his career will be over, and he'll barely be
he won't be able to afford them peep shows anymore.
Yeah, no, it's nuts. And so when I heard that, I mean, I knew something like that would happen. I just didn't think he would be ballsy enough to basically go from 50 million to nothing.
You know what that was?
Going to nothing.
That was what was it on Friday? My neck and my back. My back. You can sell right now for $20.
Somebody spilled some lettuce in the produce section. They just go slip on it. Can we settle this before I leave and go to my car?
Exactly.
That's what that was.
He owes his lawyer more than $25,000 at this point.
Yeah.
You can't tell me he doesn't. So what are you doing? What was even the point of all of this? You finna lose your job, and now everybody knows that you were pissing on your wife's sister. Worth it? I don't know, bro.
All the people in that orbit, they all get caught up in this like nonsensical stuff, and then they start like pointing the finger at everyone else. It's his fault. I'm being attacked. I'm being singled out. What have you? And ultimately, it ends up just costing them everything. Look at
everything.
Look at what was the
Giuliani
lady? The sending the Kraken. Remember her career?
Oh yeah, Sidney Powell.
Powell. Yeah. I mean, these people they've lost everything, and a lot
Mike
of these
Lindell
politicians are in the process of losing everything.
Yeah, and Mike Lindell. Go ahead, Jermaine.
Oh yeah, Lindell lost everything.
With regard to Mark Robinson, it's never been a sin. It's never been, just unethical to have a high free flag. I mean, do what you do. Where he got caught up is demonizing other people for that same behavior. And it was the hypocrisy that magnified him and people wanted to see him torn down as a result. So had he not just been this guy who was just waving this high moral flag and doing it from like pulpits even, didn't he say somebody should like die? Yeah.
People
don't forget
speaking
that.
of which,
yeah, go ahead, Joy.
I would like to share a whole different story that came through this week. Speaking of, pulpits and naughty behavior. Check this out.
It's good to see everybody here. I still stand for the flag. for the red, white, and blue.
Right now, we turn to a music and youth director facing disturbing allegations of criminal sexual conduct.
And the shocking news is leading to uncomfortable questions for a Washtenaw County church community.
That's right. 29-year-old Zachary Radcliffe is accused of sexual assault and soliciting inappropriate photos and video of teenagers.
I still go out of my way to shake a veteran's hand and tell them thank you. That's right.
Zachary Radcliffe, the now former youth director at Oakwood Church, is facing almost a dozen felony charges surrounding sex crimes against minors. Investigators believe those crimes span back a decade, and they also believe there could be more victims out there.
Well, the Pledge of Allegiance is hanging on my wall.
29-year-old Zachary Radcliffe is being held on a $3 million bond, charged with 11 felony counts. He's the former youth and music director at Oakwood Church. Radcliffe is accused of sexually assaulting and soliciting inappropriate photos from teens.
Y'all see that Liberty
We're
University
showing you his
in the
mugshot
background?
because investigators believe more people may have been victimized.
Mm-hmm.
So Haley Joel Osment has another character to play on SNL.
Oh, yeah.
It's JD Vance is Haley Joel Osment is Zachary Radcliffe in. I want pictures of kids.
They're
oh
tripping over
my
themselves
God.
over there. So many of them.
And remember, there was
Can I
that
just
couple.
say-
There were the Moms for Liberty. Remember the
Yes.
Moms for Liberty? Same hypocrisy. Everything they were saying, wagging their finger at, those progressive or those liberals. They're heathens, and they were doing all of it.
It begs the question, why is that such a big part of Project 2025? Because there is like this huge section of Project 25 that's devoted to the cleansing of our country. With regards to that kind of
1984
behavior.
sex crime.
I think Joyce has something to say on that.
Oh, no, she is.
Okay, so this goes back to not the founding, but the original population of our country. Because remember, our founding fathers with the whole, documentation separated church and state, and they did it for a reason, because it's a lot of sexually oppressed religious freaks that came here, and the whole idea, the pilgrims came here to escape religious oppression from Europe. No, they didn't. They absolutely fucking did not. They came here because Europe was letting a freak flag fly.
Yeah.
And they were like, ew, no. God doesn't want us to enjoy life. God doesn't want us to smile. God wants us to work hard. And the harder you work, the closer you are, and blah, blah, blah. That whole cleanliness and next to godliness, that shit ain't in the Bible. This whole thing about you're lazy and laziness. Guilt, none of that shit is in the Bible.
Yeah.
But the Puritans had this idea that sex was bad because the people that were pushing puritanical indoctrination had a problem with sexual activity as a whole. This is true. This is true. Look it up if you want to. The woman's part in sex under puritanical ideas was to lay there perfectly still while her husband labored over her and pray for conception. If she looked to enjoy it, she was said to potentially have been possessed by an evil spirit. This is when they started burning witches and shit, right?
Yeah.
Don't like sex. If you like sex, you were more than likely a whore. Your husband could divorce you and put you out for moving and groaning a little too much, right? So to lay there and not like it. But there were whores on the other side of town that could do what they want. The whole thing was crazy. So this hypocrisy, this double standard came with them to the United States. Why do you think we call it missionary position?
Oh my God, it has its roots in that.
Yes.
So why does all of this apply to Mark Robinson, but it doesn't? None of it sticks to Donald Trump.
Because Donald Trump has never said he was a Christian. Donald Trump has let Christians support him, but he has gone on screen and said, "I've never asked for forgiveness. I like the Bible. If y'all want to say I like the Bible, I like the Bible." He has said it that way. I've never really brought God into anything. He has said it that way, and people have heard what they wanted to hear because he has also said, "I hate what you hate." He has never said, I love God. He has never said, I pray. He walked out in the street with his Bible in his hand, like
upside down.
Upside down,
Yeah.
exactly.
Sure, here you go. Now he'll sell a Bible because that's money.
And wasn't that the time he asked Millie about shooting the protesters in the,
Yeah.
in the leg?
Exactly.
So that he
To
could
make
get
it-
to the church.
Yes.
But
Correct.
to make it more plain, Mark, the reason why it doesn't hold weight with Donald Trump symbolizes what they want in their leader. Without me being,
No, he symbolizes what they want to continue to oppress, which is other.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Joy's right on it. It's what they want to oppress and what they want and who they want to hate.
Yeah.
He
What
supports
do you
them on
know
what they
about-
want to hate.
Look at the history between like sexual oppression and Henry Ford, the Model T Ford, that Henry Ford, Kellogg of Kellogg's Frosted Flakes, cornflakes, that Kellogg, even Freud, Sigmund Freud thought that the female clitoris was a waste of time and had them take it out of Gray's Anatomy book, the anatomy book that doctors were used to teach like anatomy. It wasn't in there. It was just static. Just don't use that. That's worthless. And so when we talk about sexual repression, when we talk about being okay with sex, the reason that so many Americans are circumcised now is because Kellogg and Henry Ford said if you circumcise them, they will remember the trauma and be less likely to masturbate. That's why it was adopted so widely by so many doctors. It ain't got shit to do with cleanliness. Nothing. And we still do it to this day. Why? Because, well, my son's dick should look like mine. And it's perpetuated that way. It had nothing to do with health or hygiene or anything, and everything to do with trying to stop people from enjoying sex. And a whole lot of things in the United States go back to sex is bad. Sex is bad for you and you shouldn't be doing it. And if you do it and enjoy it, you're going to hell. All of that is tied together. And it comes to them goddamn Puritans and their weird ideas because they had weird fascination and like love-hate relationship with the idea of healthy sex. Ironically, they were still getting it in because they continue to propagate.
Well, they were human.
The shame that they carry with it, they put off on other people, and they started to demonize like the Native Americans because they walk around half naked. It's hot as shit in Florida. What do you expect, right? All of this goes together. All of it goes together, and even trying to have a sex drive. Kinsey was demonized for the work that he was doing just to try to understand the human body. All of this goes into believing, people with power believing that sex is bad. I could talk about this for 5 more hours because I really wanted to understand it at one point, but I'm just going to stop at this point.
But don't the Jewish culture, isn't there like a practice that they have where they put a sheet over the woman and have sex with her through that? Because it's some way, because they're only supposed to view sex as a way of procreation.
I'm not familiar with that one.
It's like the Orthodox Jews, they put a sheet between the man and the woman, and it's only supposed to be used for procreation. I know that has to be
I have heard something around that, but I would have to look it up. But it is not because of any sort of like
it's nothing akin to what you're saying.
Forbiddenness or like nastiness or anything. Like, yeah,
Okay.
it's a ceremony or something, but I don't remember exactly what I heard about it. But I have heard that before, and I don't know if it was necessarily Jewish, but I have heard that somewhere. I'd have to go look that up.
I think some very strictly observant Hasidic Jews may do that, and I don't even know if that's like the standard practice. And I know that some Latter-day Saints folks definitely have some interesting undergarments that they use. But I think at the end of the day, what we do know about sex, and one of the 2 candidates who is going to be elected president this year, is that one of them has no problem sexually assaulting women.
Right.
Sheets, no sheets, missionary, non-missionary. He has no problem with it. And I'm just now hearing some things that I had never heard before about the E. Jean Carroll case, which stunned me. He is on tape saying that, well, I guess she thought maybe it was sexy. And it's like, wait.
Wow. So you do know.
A, you're admitting that you had sex with her, and now you're saying, because apparently she went on Anderson Cooper and she said something that he twisted and turned into her saying that it actually was fun for her or whatever. So in addition to the fact that I actually heard the actual statement that Ivana Trump made, when she accused him of raping her.
Oh, yeah.
Because he was getting some some little surgery or something, and it hurt him. And so he came into the room and started ripping out handfuls of her hair. And then
she had referred the doctor, and he didn't like the work he had done.
He didn't like the work. Threw her on the bed, raped her. She ran out of the room screaming. It was the first time they had intercourse in had sexual contact in 16 months. And later on, when she was trying to get her divorce settlement and trying to make sure she was getting the money she wanted or whatever, she backtracked and said, it was not a loving situation, but I don't want my words taken literally as rape, as in, ba, 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 ba. It was not the sort of intimacy that we had experienced at other points in our marriage. And so I would not want this to be interpreted any other way than exactly as I put it on this paper. And this document or this statement may not be used out of context. It must be used completely, exactly, and intact and whole as I have articulated it here today. And he put that woman in a back ditch, damn near, of that 560-acre estate and doesn't care for it at all. And your sons, Ivana, are trash.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
For allowing you to be no real headstone. Like, this is your mother. I don't care what you think, and if you think your orthodoxy to your father is such that you can't love your mother anymore. This guy who is such a family man, he's got more families than most people. So this is what you are saying is acceptable, that your mother is basically just around dead raccoons and acorns and shit. Like, seriously?
And it was so that they would get a tax break on the
because he wanted to classify a portion of the thing as a cemetery.
So he continues to use her even in her death.
Yeah,
I mean,
I think
that's
to bring out the quote.
The Epstein story is also expanding. More of the women are telling more of the stories about how Epstein and Trump were good friends and how they were being groomed by the two of them together.
Yeah,
he was friends with Epstein and Diddy. Fucking a lot of smoke right there. But I mean, as far as Ivana is concerned, there's a Zora Neale Hurston quote that says, "If you are silent about," and this is for anybody who's going through something or feeling like if you stay quiet, it'll be okay, it'll help, they'll understand you in the future, whatever. Zora Neale Hurston quote: "If you are silent about your pain, they will kill you." And say you enjoyed it.
And say you enjoyed it. Exactly. Yeah.
Remember that.
That is, audience, country, listen to Zora Neale Hurston, y'all. Listen to Zora Neale Hurston. It's interesting to me, and Mark, I want to get your way in on this because this is something that Liz Cheney has been doing as she's been stumping and going around. There's a new trend because Cheney is being used to speak directly to Republican and Republican-leaning center-right women. Something she said on the campaign trail this week really intrigued me. And basically she said, listen, you don't have to tell anybody who you vote for.
Right.
But go in and vote the way you would really want to vote. And say whatever you want to out of the box, but don't go in there and do something and vote for somebody that you don't want to vote for because you feel like you're going to be judged by your other people. Lie to those people. Yeah. And the other thing the big pitch that she was making is that you can be pro-life and support Kamala Harris. Because here's the thing,
you don't have to agree with her on every issue. Yeah.
But here's the thing that doesn't get said enough. Pro-choice doesn't mean abort all babies. Y'all are trying to make it like this zero-sum game. Like if you're pro-choice, there are no more babies anymore. All you're saying is that a woman has the right to make that determination for herself, her family, in concert, in discussion with her medical practitioner, who should not be bound in any way by any foolishness.
And if you don't want your child to have an abortion, don't take her to get one.
Yeah.
Don't take her to get
not
one.
Enough, though.
And if they want to call themselves pro-life, then they need to start supporting those babies once they're born.
Yeah,
I mean,
child tax credit that they all voted against. How is that pro-life?
Yeah,
because it isn't. And the rank hypocrisy of the elements of our electorate that call themselves one thing while exhibiting all of the traits and behaviors that are completely antithetical to that position is stark.
They're not,
And
you know what? They're not pro-life. They're pro-human crops.
Yeah.
Think about that.
they're really
it's all about
pro-handmade.
control.
That's what they are.
Would you say, Mark?
It's control as well. They
Right.
want to be able to say, you fell in line behind them, behind their beliefs, behind their wishes. It's not even they don't really have an argument that goes much deeper than that. They just want to control what you can do, and when you ask them for an explanation or to defend their position, they have no defense, because it doesn't go much deeper than that.
But
Right.
wasn't the whole argument to be against abortion in the beginning was so that there can be more of them, because they saw themselves dwindling as far as population? Wasn't that like the reason for it to begin with, or is it still like, what is the reasons besides having this religious justification for it? I thought it was to keep the white race
It
populated.
was to keep the white race propagating, because they were running around secretly sterilizing black populations, and Puerto Rico as well.
All right. But they're not having babies like they used to. A lot of white women, they don't have a lot of kids like they used to back in the day.
Which is why they're attacking on multiple fronts. Yeah.
You listen, the eugenics part of the argument is part of it. The white supremacy part of the argument is part of it. I think for most people who are adopting this very hard line, I think it starts from a religious basis on most. And then you have people who are happy to hide behind religion for their white supremacy / eugenics views.
Yep.
You know, the Charlie Kirks of the world, the Tucker Carlsons of the world, you know, all these people who really couldn't care anything about an actual baby or fetus. Go ahead, Joy.
Let's not forget that the way that religion is used in the United States also supports patriarchy, which is
absolutely
agnostic. And so there is this idea of subjugating all women under the idea of submit to your husband and he will take care of you. A woman's place is in the home, blah, 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 be a helpmeet, you're my rib, all that other bullshit. So the idea of putting women back in their place is also a massive part of Project 2025.
Right.
And then, of course, the irony of all of that, wanting to force the women back into the home while creating an economy that forces them to work to support the family. So how do those two meet? They don't. They've been electing officials that are forcing 2 and 3 and 4 income households.
Sure.
And there's only one
woman home. Yeah.
And there's only one candidate who's talking about raising the minimum wage. I'll give you one guess as to who that is.
Jill Stein.
Jill Stein.
No, it's Kamala Harris. So here's something that I want to give.
One thing before we get off this whole abortion thing. Have y'all been paying attention to the way they're trying to tweak child labor laws?
Oh boy.
Oh good Lord, they have lowered the age considerably.
So do you understand what happens?
Level.
Yeah. You extrapolate this out.
At the state level. Yeah. I'm sorry. I know there's a delay, so sorry.
It's all good. But you extrapolate that out. And I'm not even having to go to extremes. So you extrapolate that out. You relax the laws around child labor and force women to have more children. And there's your slave labor that you are no longer able to get from mass incarceration if people of color are able to, relieve some of that. Now you can't put people in jail for weed the way you used to. So you just start forcing them to abject poverty to this 2 and 3 income household that you need. If you can start employing them at 14 and also let them work a full 40-hour work week at 16, but they don't really have any skills beyond manual labor because they haven't been to college or whatever yet, there's your cheap labor. And now you don't have to outsource it to China because you can get it in Alabama.
Yeah.
They ain't even talking about a 40-hour work week. They're talking 160-hour work month.
Yeah.
So that they don't have to pay overtime.
Yep.
So I don't know if any of you have seen the movie Snowpiercer, but it is.
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
So Snowpiercer kind of addresses this very thing. By the time we get to the 3rd act of Snowpiercer, it is determined that all of the people who are living in the back, the furthest part of the train where you don't have any of the luxuries and all of that, basically they are just allowed to survive, to continue having children because the children are small enough to do this essential task that is necessary to keep the engine going all the time. And the black mother who is trying to get her child, and Chris Evans, who is trying to rescue this child, to get to the front of the train just to do this. He finds the little baby, and the baby is basically brainwashed, and all he's doing is ungunking the thing with his hand, and you know, he's been totally conditioned and trained to do this one task. So even when he's given the opportunity to be free, he doesn't want to do it because he's been told that this is so important. And that this is exactly what Joy is talking about, minus the chronal and the Arctic temperatures, which are probably on the way because of climate change that Donald Trump is ignoring. And by the way, Donald Trump, you don't get more beachfront property when the oceans rise, because the oceans encroach on the ground. So you actually get less beachfront property, which is you just not understanding simple water displacement and physics, which is astonishingly upsetting to me.
That one has always gotten me, because I would make the I would describe it differently. I'd be like, have you ever cut the crust off of a sandwich?
Right.
Did your sandwich get bigger or smaller?
Right.
Yeah, but he'd reject that. He just need a Sharpie.
Yeah.
But to button this all up, guys, what I've come to the conclusion is that this country has never gotten away from the framework, the skeleton of slavery. It has always been around in some reiteration, be it the school to prison pipeline, be it child labor. All that stuff started when we were brought over here. They've just looked for different ways to keep that same machine going.
Mm-hmm.
It's not as harsh, but if you really dissect it, it's just a form of slavery. Basically.
And the thing is, no empire in the history of the world has prospered without some form of extremely cheap or enslaved labor. The way slavery has happened in the United States was extremely cruel and vicious. So slaves go back to the Bible, if you want to use the Bible as an example. You have your untouchables. And again, I urge people to read the book Caste by Isabel Wilkerson, but you have your untouchables where, you know, they do jobs that no one else will do. Even though they could automate a lot of that shit, they force them into that caste in order to continue to humiliate a whole swath of their population. But even in Rome, you had people doing menial jobs. It's always been that serf caste, right? Somebody that'll do something next to nothing. And it's how empires are formed.
Yeah.
The difference is we being the United States writ large, we try to act like we're better than that. And we would never do that. And there's that hypocrisy rearing its ugly head again. Oh, we would never clutch the pearls. We've got to stop them from doing genocide. Y'all, y'all did genocide 2 or 3 times. What you talking about? Trying to pretend that butter won't melt in our mouth is part of our problem, because that means we cannot face our past, because we have to admit once again we are no better than anybody else, which takes away this moral high ground, with which we try to police the rest of the world.
Yeah,
you know, because we've gotten that pushback from a lot of folks like China and Japan and other places where we're like, you need to stop, and like, you need to mind your business, America, because y'all have done some bullshit too. And so that becomes a new argument, and we can no longer hide our dirty laundry. So it's all part and parcel. But that's why
immigration is a nothing burger of an issue every election cycle.
Exactly.
Because we depend on those immigrants to do that type of work you just described.
Mm-hmm. Right. And if they would just go ahead and admit that that's what's happening, and as the Democrats sometimes try to do, create a method towards citizenship with an understanding that this is part of it. Like, all right, you're going to pick some berries for a few years, and then you can get in here and get good. Just let it happen.
Yeah.
But they're so afraid that it's going to, I love the memes that are going around talking about if someone who doesn't speak the language and has no real transferable skills is able to take your job, we need to talk about what job you're doing.
Exactly.
You know? Anyway, Mark, I'm sorry, I was running on. I think I had.
No. I was just going to say another layer to that is actually the free trade agreements, which took those a lot of those jobs from people who were making decent wages, sent them off to other countries where they had enslaved labor. They were like in those Chinese factories where they were locking them in. They could not leave the factory. So, you know, because it was now happening over there, we could pretend that we weren't a part of it.
Right.
That it didn't affect us and we didn't sign off on it.
But then they just do that in Tennessee.
Jobs. Go ahead, Joy. What'd you say?
Didn't they just do that in Tennessee? Wasn't there a big story during the hurricane in Tennessee where they had those people working in the factory?
Oh yes, that one boss. He told his
wow.
people they couldn't go home, and a bunch of them died.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
He
So
said you're going to
it's-
work through the hurricane, and then there was like a collapse or something happened,
Yeah.
and a
Recently
bunch of
this
his
happened?
employees died.
During Hurricane Helene in
Oh,
Yeah.
Tennessee.
God. Wow.
Mhm.
That's interesting.
Capitalism. So for all these people that have so much love for the Bible literally says in red letters, which means Jesus said it, love of money is the
Yeah.
root of evil.
Mhm.
Not money itself, but chasing it. Corrupt capitalism.
So
Choosing-
during whose administration did all those jobs, especially those customer service jobs that we often hear, we call the, people when you hear somebody in a foreign country, whose administration was responsible? Was that Bush or was that Clinton?
It was Clinton and W. Bush.
Yeah.
Okay.
So basically, what happened was Ronald Reagan wrote those free trade agreements, but he
Mhm.
couldn't get them passed. Then HW couldn't get them passed. Then Clinton said, "I got you," and he got them passed by bringing Democrats to the table for
Mhm.
bipartisanship. So now Clinton's whole idea was I could steal all of the Republican donors and voters and create a permanent majority, but he was going to create a permanent majority using a lot of their agenda, and that just wasn't workable. So
So how did we get the windfall of that? Like, how did we capitalize on the money part of that? That's the part I've never understood about the
we haven't capitalized.
Okay.
The corporations have. The workers have taken it in the nutsack at every turn.
Every policy that has tied itself to any form of trickle down economics has failed.
It's a farce.
Nothing ever trickles down because,
Mhm.
again, love of money. Why would I give it to you and I can keep it?
And,
I remember
and-
when I was first learning sales, they had a slogan at the company I was working for: "Money in my pocket is better than money in your pocket," and they taught us that.
Right.
Boop. So
That's why I
I
have
just
a hard
want to.
time with the whole economy argument. Especially, I'm hearing a lot of black men saying that, when he was president, I had a lot of money in my pocket. Even the ones, I'm not talking about stimulus checks. I'm talking about people who benefited for a time. Because my best friend Sheila, I remember her saying that there was a period of time under Trump that her checks were a little bit higher than what they normally were. And mind you, she's a professional at Parkland there in Dallas. So I don't know what he did during that time that made the adjustment in the tax, cuts to work in her favor. But she could attest to that. And I'm hearing a lot of brothers, especially when he goes into these black places, saying the same thing. So I do wonder if this economy argument of them saying why they want to vote for him has a little bit of merit to it. I didn't feel it.
Well, let's just say, because I don't like bringing up questions that are unanswered.
Mhm.
Depending on your tax bracket, I don't know if your friend was making more than $400,000 a year. But if she was, then she did probably get a bit of a break.
No, she wasn't making that, but there was a
Okay,
people
but
did say there was some
let's be
increase.
clear.
Mhm.
Whatever the break was for people who are not billionaires and millionaires,
Mhm.
it's not like you were getting $1,000 more a check.
Hmm.
You might have been getting $35 more a check, and you just see, oh, it's more. It's more than what I'm used to. And that $36 per check is $72 a month, and $72 a month times 12 months is, maybe $1,000 over the year, which is not an insignificant amount. I'm not trying to downplay that.
Right.
However, what ended up happening is that our deficit, which your children are going to be paying off, grew astronomically because you wanted $33 a check, a little bit more. And at the end of the day, everybody's talking about how expensive things are and everything else. Go to any other country on the planet, bruh. We are doing the best of any industrialized nation in terms of constraints of costs. There's no place on the planet. We live on a big blue marble. Everything is more expensive everywhere because of the pandemic, because of supply chain issues, because of, the money that was being printed in order to keep things going and all this. Yes, there were definitely people who got those $1,700 checks, and then they got another $1,700 check. And under Biden, even, they probably got another $1,000. So yeah, there were checks that were deposited into folks' accounts, but that was not Trump economic policy. That was Congress voting to stimulate the economy because a lot of people were out of work and they didn't want every other business that was still selling stuff. You didn't want every McDonald's to close down. You didn't want every single Burger King or whatever. So you give people a little money so they go out and spend it. Some of those people went to Target, helping to keep Target open. A lot of those people went to Walmart, helping to keep Walmart flush with cash. They redistributed the wealth from the tax base that was collected and sent a little bit out to everybody so that they could feel a little more comfortable during a horrible pandemic. That's not economic policy, that's printing money. And the consequence of printing money is increased inflation. And you don't see the increased inflation right away. You only see it after. So when all those checks started going out in the last year of Trump's administration, yeah, everybody in 2020 was getting checks. You know, I think our family got the $3,400 or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Early 2022, inflation's on the rise.
And inflation hits because you had a year of spending.
I believe that the first year of the Trump tax cuts, the middle class got a little piece of that.
That's what I was talking about.
The rich, their cuts were permanent.
Right.
For the middle class, they had a one-time only cut, and then they were taxed on that cut the next year.
Right.
So whatever they saved the previous year, they were charged.
They had to pay back.
That was added to their income.
Right.
So they were taxed on that the following year. Now to go back to where this conversation started about how people were feeling better at the beginning, like more economically secure at the beginning of the Trump administration. At the end of the day, Obama has answered that. That's
what I was getting ready to tie it up to. Before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't start seeing the effects of a new administration's policies until their second term. In their first term, they're still riding on the fumes of their predecessor, because by the time they pass it and then implement it, and then you start to feel it, you've got at least 3 years down the road. So, yeah, you don't really. So all of that early, I feel good. That was all the Obama economy, and whoever's going to follow Biden is going to inherit what is an economy heading in the right direction.
Right.
So they're going to be on the fumes of this. And
that's why they like to try to keep Democrats to like a one-term limit, because the Democrats come in, they fix some things up, they try to balance the budget, and then they ride off of that and say, look how great it was when I was in office, and then they leave a wreck when they come in. It's a cycle.
Oh yeah, they leave a dumpster fire behind all of them. But W. Bush left a dumpster fire, Trump left a dumpster fire. And they, and then the Trump folks, they want to take credit for the Obama economy the first 3 years, but they think they get a pass for that last year. And it's like, no, you don't get a pass for that last year, because the reason things got as bad as they did was his catastrophic mishandling of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
It didn't need to get as bad as it did.
Points clear. Most people, aside from us that are informed, they don't know that. They don't, and we can't expect lay people to just connect those dots that way. That's why
they don't know. You're right, and they're not being connected for them. The media is not connecting it for them.
They see extra money, they think of the person that's in the office, and they automatically give them the credit.
Mm-hmm.
That's just,
even with the handling of the pandemic, we are a country that only has two contiguous border countries, Canada and Mexico. And he was so busy demonizing China and other Asian countries and stopping trade with China, and nobody paid attention to the Europeans coughing their way into the United States. And if they had barred all travel, it would have been a completely different story.
Right.
Of how that spread in the United States. We could have potentially gotten a handle on it. But now, because he has a tendency to want to like European visitors, they're not them. They're fine. But close down everything else that is any sort of melanin. And that wasn't even the problem. The problem was everybody else had already been picking it up everywhere else, because don't nobody wash their hands. And then they were steady coming into the country, and it got here anyway.
And And if you think about where it hit first, it was all the big cities, the big democratic cities were who got hit first, because that's where all the ships are coming in,
Yep,
where all the
international
planes are
travel.
coming,
And
all the
heavy
international
concentration.
travel comes in there. So it took a while to get out to the suburbs.
And that's
And
really what I
remember.
figured out how stupid a lot of Americans are. Because I was talking to a guy that I know had a master's degree. I know, because I looked it up, because we were up for the same job at one point. And we're talking, and I was giving him the understanding of like what Australia had done. He goes, well, Australia, no, New Zealand. New Zealand is small. I said, yeah, you got a point.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, but I said even China is handling things better than we are. He goes, well, but China is a smaller country than we are.
what?
He just said? He goes, we're big. I was like, how big? And how big do you think the United States is as far as the population of the world? He goes, I don't know, like 20%. Bruh.
Yeah.
We're like hovering around 5. Really? I was like, how many people do you think live in China? He goes, Scott, I don't know, like maybe like 80 million. You know what? Get away from me. You don't.
Oh my God.
The fuck do you think? Why would you think that? He goes, well, because we're a global superpower. That doesn't mean we got more people.
I thought everybody knew China was the most populous country in the world.
No.
Not him. People forget
Well,
about
and
Ebola.
India's right in pace. I mean,
India is
India's
coming up.
number 2 for sure. Yeah.
You remember when we had that Ebola outbreak in Texas and how quickly Obama just put it away?
Yeah, it lasted all of a week and a half.
Listen.
A week and a half.
I saw Outbreak, and Outbreak gave me nightmares for years. That scene where they were in the movie theater and the people are laughing and those little particles are going out of people's mouths and people are breathing them in, and then the next day at the hospital it's just overrun with shaking people with lesions and blood coming out everywhere. I was like,
Yeah. Obama also handled swine flu and bird flu.
Yep.
Yeah.
So he had 3 potential pandemics.
Measures
And
were in place.
Yeah.
Measures were in place. Trump had, and it was reported, I don't know if I can't verify this right now, but I feel like they said he knew about this potential outbreak of COVID like the fall of 2019, like around. Is that true? Because there were like not rumors, but like incidences of they always get like World Health Organization reports, incidences of respiratory infections that were as yet unclassified, et cetera, et cetera. And so somebody with just a healthy amount of paranoia is like, what is this? Let's keep an eye on that. He's like, whatever, it's not a burger. I don't care about it. Also, those are the kind of things that in that manual that what was it, a readiness manual that Obama had left them, talked about things to look for that could potentially be red flags around a potential pandemic coming, because we all knew it was just a matter of time. This isn't even new. One. Yeah.
We've had pandemics before in the world, but what do you think the Black Plague was? This is not new to us. But how to handle it, we had a plan, and he was just like, F your plan, N-word. We don't need your stupid black plan. We're not doing that. He burned everything. What?
Bleach, sunlight.
Yeah, just put sunlight in your blood. Hydrochloroquine.
And you know how we got the vaccine so fast? It wasn't because of anything Trump did or said. They just adapted the bird flu. They adapted it to the DNA markings of the bird flu. So they already had the technology in place. They just needed to adapt it.
Because viruses only take so many configuration, and like, this is close enough, let's start here. They save themselves 2 years of research by starting with a good starting point.
Exactly.
It's just instances like that should prove over and over again how much this man is just unfit to lead. They said one of his first responses to when COVID pretty much took over our country, there goes my presidency. Nothing about the well-being of the people that you're governing. There goes my presidency. But that's not even enough for turning, different eyes and different minds away from him. There's still something about this man that they are willing to surrender all integrity, all scruples, just to say that he is their figurehead. And one of these days, we're going to literally study that and just figure out why, because I think it's a lot deeper than him just being a white man. I feel like I don't want to get into that, but there's something underneath that to me that I feel like that we're not even scratching yet as to why this man is just so endearing and comes across so unscathed beyond the pale.
And that brings me to something else I want to share. I just want to remind our users, our viewers, I'll share this on our page on Instagram and Facebook, but y'all need to remember exactly how pitiful this man is. Just hang on just 1 second. Let me share this with y'all.
Failed businesses. Here are just a few. Trump Ice bottled water, sold as the purest water from a secret spring, is from Vermont. Trump steaks ranged from $200 to $1,000. They were discontinued after 2 months. Trump Shuttle Airlines. Trump borrowed $250 million to buy an airline, but he didn't take care of the airplane, so an airplane crashed and then they went out of business after only 2 years. Trump Vodka discontinued, low sales, many lawsuits over unpaid bills. Trump Castle, bankrupt and rebranded as Trump Marina. Trump Marina, bankrupt and sold. Trump Plaza, bankrupt and demolished. Trump's World Fair, bankrupt and demolished. Trump Taj Mahal Casino, it was advertised as the 8th wonder of the world, bankrupt and sold. Trump University, scam thousands, many lawsuits and investigations. Trump Network, MLM that sold vitamins and health stuff. Trump Board Game with Milton Bradley, pulled from shelves because it didn't sell. He later tried to re-release it. It sold even less. Trump Mortgage LLC, financial services, lasted a year. GoTrump.com, travel site, lasted a year. Trump Fragrances, pulled from shelves due to low sales. Trump Home Furniture, pulled from shelves due to low sales. Trump Net, telephone communication company, ran out of money before it even opened, and soon to fail because they all do. Truth Social, brought to you by Trump Media.
So, while we're on the topic of diseases and failure, I would just like to mention, in case anybody had missed this, that Rudy Giuliani, he who owes $150 million to Ruby and Seamus, Ruby Freeman Seamus, has now finally been struck with the final disposition of his assets. So he didn't have that many assets. He barely had 1/10 of the $150 million judgment, and that includes condos in a couple of different states and his apartment in New York, which arguably was the most valuable asset that he had. He has been ordered to turn that crib over to the mother and daughter. His watch collection, his BMW, anything that had a material value that could be liquidated, he has now been ordered to turn that over. After 2 years of obfuscation and asshattery, now it's done. And you got to pack up. I don't know if those people are going to do like an Airbnb or whatever. Exactly. And while we're on the topic of My Pillow, y'all do know that Mike Lindell has a sale on his My Pillows for $14.88, which, in case you didn't know what $14.88 is,
They're at Ross too.
Oh, are they?
Mm-hmm.
Well, on mypillow.com, he's got the 14, which are the 14 words used by Nazis, and then the 88. The 8 stands for H, which is the 8th letter. So the 88 is Heil Hitler. So 1488 is a number sequence that white supremacists use, kind of like a code or whatever. Except that now everybody knows what the code is, so it's not particularly effective. But the fact that he's selling pillows for $14.88, and Lara Trump and Alina Habba, who are the poster girls for anti-Constitution Barbie, are heading up these boat parades where Nazis are proudly flying swastikas, Heil Trump, and all of this other sort of stuff. Meanwhile, people are considering that he is still a viable and moral person. Y'all, we're down to 12 days. And what I would ask everybody who is watching us to do is to make sure that not only are you getting yourself there, but you are getting the folks you go to church with, your cousins, make sure that folks are registered to vote. And some states have same-day voting, but your ballot will be provisional. Provisional ballots may make the difference this year. Do not hesitate to cast your vote. Make sure, especially if you are in one of the few critical states that can make or break this decision. If you're in Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Florida, Texas, Arizona, please, 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 Georgia, please, 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 make sure that you are not only getting yourself and your own vote tallied, tabulated, and calculated, but make sure that anybody you rock with is also doing the exact same thing. It is too important.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, as far as like the polling and who's winning, why is it so close? I've never been convinced that it is that close. I think that our base is a lot bigger than theirs. But exactly what Tom was saying, just because our base is bigger doesn't mean we're going to get them all to vote. We've got to get, if we show up to vote, this isn't going to be close. He's got a very low ceiling. He cannot go above that ceiling. There's no place else for him to go for voters. And he's finding a peel off from that. Whereas we've got a much bigger base, we've got to get them out to the polls. If we get them to the polls, this really is not going to be close because they flooded the zone with these right-wing polling organizations. Yeah. So whenever they talk about this, like polling averages, what they're doing is they're looking at half of them are right-wing polling operations that have just been created during the Trump era to create the illusion of him doing better than he is and to try and discourage the Democrats, to get them frustrated. There's nothing we can do. No matter what we do, he keeps coming back. He ain't coming back. They're just way oversampling Republicans in those stupid polls. Get to the polls, get out and vote, because our base is way bigger than theirs. They're also not fit when they talk about likely voters. They're not factoring in all the surge of new voters since the overturn of Roe v. Wade. They're not factoring in all of the Gen Z. When they look at demographics, who is the most conservative demographic? Baby boomers. Baby boomers are a much smaller group now than they were in 2020 and much smaller than they were in 2016. So when you look at the older age group, a lot of those folks are now Gen X. Now look at the other end of that spectrum when you're talking about the younger voters. Back in 2016, those were millennials. Now they're Gen Z. Millennials notoriously didn't participate. Gen Z does participate. Yep. And so if their models are based on a low voter turnout of young people, that was based on low voter turnout of millennials. And they're not going to get that from Gen Z. So, so we
Gen Z is those Parkland kids.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, yeah. David Hogg and all them. Yeah.
These junk polls are nothing more than evidence for when they do try to challenge the decision in the courts. They want to be able to say, we were leading, exactly that. And then these lawsuits, because lawsuits are already going up around the country in several election areas, polling areas. And they're just empty lawsuits. They're not going to go anywhere. But they need all this justification to take to the higher officials when it's time to make the case. So, go ahead, Joy.
First off, Mark, every yes, and double yes to everything that you just said. Because I was sitting over here, like my soul was like, yes, he's 100% right. And I had a point, and I lost it as I started talking. But I don't know what it was. I don't know what it was, but it was the polling and the courts. It just happened here in Georgia. Some Republicans tried to pass they passed like 7 different laws that was going to make it ridiculous to try and certify the results. And this Georgia State courts was like, And what I like about it, because we talked about naming this episode today, like the enemy within is you, Donnie. A lot of conservative Republicans that run the state of Georgia were like, we're not doing that. That's fucking stupid, and it's unconstitutional, and it flies in the face of lawmakers making law. We don't let lobbyists make law. Fuck all that. And so the Republican-run state courts were like, and then the Supreme Court was like, new phone, who it is. Like, we're not even picking up the phone. So they refused to even hear it, so they didn't have to make a decision because like we don't want to get it. We don't have nothing to do with that. But what ended up happening is the new laws that they tried to enact were struck down, which means voter integrity from 2020 stays the way it was in 2020, which means and so a lot of people that were afraid of getting purged no longer got purged. People can still vote. They did have some folks that checked their registry and it was gone, and so they were able to re-register in time, et cetera. So like Anthony was talking about, exercise and maintain, stay engaged. But 25% of eligible voters have already voted in Georgia, and that is unprecedented.
Hell yeah.
Not
Georgia,
had that turnout for Obama or for 2020. My home state of my old state of Texas is seeing some nonsense as per usual. But again, what I heard in the post office when I was there the other day were some young voters, Georgia Tech students, because I live around the corner from Georgia Tech, and they both were young women, and they were talking about how they were excited, but they were kind of like, I guess, scared to say anything in a public spot, like, I want to vote too. Yeah, I'm voting. So they were excited to vote, but then they're like, what do you think is going on? And so one of them said, well, he's really popular.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like, I'm going to vote, but I don't think it's going to work.
Yeah.
And I was hearing that to your point, like they've seen the same trash on YouTube that I've seen. All the videos are saying that Trump's polling numbers are high and everything. And so I was just like, I said, look, I hate to be here hustling with y'all. I said, but don't believe everything you hear. I said, the people that they asked that decided to answer were saying that they vote a certain way. I said, do y'all get those phone calls? They go, oh, we don't answer the phone. Exactly. Y'all don't answer the phone, so nobody's asking y'all what y'all are doing. So don't underestimate the silent majority that y'all might have. And they were both like, oh yeah, so go vote your conscience. And they're like,
my niece had the same feeling. I asked her how was she feeling about everything, and she was sort of like, well, I'm gonna vote for her, but you can tell there was a lot of doubt. And I was like, Shaylin, take that doubt to the damn polls, and that doubted vote will fucking count for her. And that's exactly what I said. But she, she's pretty much, she's not as baked in as we are, but she sort of knows the issues. But all the juice that comes with Trump sort of overshadows her confidence, So I understand what you just said. But something you mentioned, Tom, that I want to call back to, you were talking about Mike Lindell and all these little references to this whole Hitler and Nazi regime. Guys, if we really pay attention to what's going on in our society right now, the elements in the framework of Project 2025 are already out there. If there are, if we just really, really, really watch it, we can hear it and we can see it. You mentioned the enemy within. That's just a pattern of all this rhetoric that he has been borrowing from those years when Hitler and Stalin were at their helm and running different countries. Like when he said poison the blood, that was definitely a Hitler reference to talking about the Jews, poisoning, the Aryan Jews, the Aryan Germans. What did Stalin, vermin? Vermin was a Stalin callback. I forget who he was talking about, but he described him as vermin. Even enemies within. That was a Margaret Thatcher. Guys. Back in '84, she gave this speech. And for some reason, and I don't know the context, but she was demonizing the working class in Britain. And she called them the enemies within. So somebody within that organization, they know what they're doing over there, because it seems like it's a really strategic effort to just move us to that sort of a fascist dictatorship regime. It's like a conditioning all of a sudden. And
well,
when he said that about the pillows, I was like, whoa, they are really trying to pull this ideology onto us. And before you know it, people are going to start buying into it because it sort of seeps into their psyche. You can't be taught this. You have to be conditioned into this. And
they bought into it before. You have to remember that Nazi rallies were held in New York in World War I era. We've been on that bullshit before.
Right. You're not taught this stuff. This stuff gets into your life because you see it every day. You hear it, and then it becomes something that you all of a sudden takes root inside of you. And then that's our whole way of life over here.
So, and then that ties also back into the media. And how we've got to re-regulate the media.
Right.
That the media needs to report the news and report all of it, not run it through a filter, be it a right-wing filter or a billionaire filter or
and that's why I love our TikTok vigilantes. Our TikTok, they are holding these traditional news corporations to the freaking fire. They will tell the right story. And they have to contend with that, because I promise you, my same niece I was talking about, she gets all of her news from TikTok. And she's getting the real news from TikTok. She's never watched even something as friendly as Joy Reid on MSNBC. That's not enough for her. That's too much work for her. She needs to be able to hit something and sit on TikTok and it'll stick. So it's going to have to be like a whole reckoning within the media organization once this man is gone. I feel like
remember they tried to take TikTok to court and shut it down.
Mm-hmm. And it's a wonder why even the media is not doing even a harder push against that, because isn't it my understanding that he wants to get rid of the media or like prosecute them or like hold them accountable if he's good in office? Didn't I hear something like that?
Yeah, he wants to shut down anybody that talks bad about him.
Yeah, so you would think there'd be a greater push on their part, to stand against him, but it seems like they do.
Well, they're all owned by people that support him.
Right.
Because they're billionaires too.
Right. It's crazy. Like some of these days when we hear these things like, the whole penis talk, when he was told that he was giving his closing argument, and then we get 12 minutes on Arnold Palmer and Arnold Palmer's penis. Then you go to the local news broadcasts in all the swing states, wasn't brought up. They just went right to Trump delivers his economic message, and his economic message was just tariffs.
Yeah.
With no explanation about how they would work, no understanding of how they work. I mean, a tariff, the way I explain it to people, because people don't understand. You're not charging, the tariff isn't being charged to the country. It's being charged to the exporting company. They then charge the importing company, who then charges the retailer, who then charges the consumer. So when Kamala says it's a tax, she's skipping all those other steps, and people are not able to connect those dots. They're like, it's not a tax.
Talk too much, or people will check out. So she has
exactly. I think she's doing the right thing, because a $4,000 tax increase on you is something that everybody can understand in 2 seconds. To say this to this to this to this, that is the one thing. Even though he's countering it with his lies, I think that is the easiest thing for people to understand about a tariff. For her to say the country doesn't pay it, you do, and it would result in your prices increasing by $4,000 for the average family. That to me is a perfect message of tariffs. The people that he's talking to don't care, because they don't care what he says. They just want to vote for him. But for her to be able to say to other people, to simply be able to counter that with a single sentence like that, is about the best thing she can do, because it doesn't wade into wonkiness. It's very easy to understand. They don't pay, you do, and it would make your prices $4,000 a year more.
I think when she calls it a tax, that's when people get confused, because they're like, it's not a tax, it's a tariff.
Well, but a tariff is, an extra syllable. It's still a tax. It's just, it ends up being a tax because it ends up coming to you in the form of higher prices that would not be there except for the tariff. So
it's an increase in cost of the good or service.
Let me settle this for y'all, because I watch YouTube all day, because that's what I've been doing in my life, and I get those two commercials between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump all day, every day. And the way that it is explained in her commercials all day is that Donald Trump wants to add tariffs to goods that are going to raise your expenses by $4,000 a year. It's a tax on your life. Like, so she does try to tie tariff to tax in that ad. It does come across very simple, because she's only got 15 seconds before you can hit skip. And so she's only got that amount of time to tell you Donald Trump is going to cost you $4,000 per family per year. And she's trying to do a tax cut that's going to give a tax cut to 100 million people. Now, I'm also doing the math here. 100 million people is not a lot of people once it's all said and done, but I'll take 100 million people getting a tax cut over the course of a year versus everyone potentially feeling the $4,000 increase in expenses over the course of a year.
Well, a lot of those people in the 330 million people that we have in this country, a lot of those people are kids, and they ain't paying taxes no way. So it really just kind of depends on whether or not, is 100 million the equivalent to 50 million households? Is it the equivalent of 60 million households or 70 million households?
It's more than the number of billionaires, I'll tell you that. So I'm all for it. Right. Mm-hmm. But I also think that there's a lot of people that are just looking for a reason not to listen to what
Right.
she's saying. And so they'll just, she's talking crazy. He didn't say, they do the semantics thing. He didn't say he was going to pay tax. He didn't say pay a tariff. And still don't want to hear it because they just don't want to hear it. They want to try to, like people that watched her interview on Fox and said that she was silly or stupid.
Oh my
Or
God.
she didn't make any sense. Clearly, you just wanted to say that and you didn't watch anything. But another thing around tariffs, because I've had people talk to me about it, they go, tariffs made good sense for the market and the economy. I was like, yeah, that depends on how you use them. Right. If you wanted to use tariffs to discourage a particular product from being successful in a free market system where it's got a lot of competition, it becomes the high price option and a lot of options, and it won't do as well. If you wanted to do that, if you bring it in and say, like, I don't know, plastic pencils, and the tariff on this plastic pencil from China makes it $11, everybody else's pencil is $6, nobody's going to buy that pencil. But if you do tariffs on everything coming in from all the country, where that particular product doesn't have a lot of competition and people are used to buying it already, they're going to buy it because they have to, like groceries, like produce, where we don't produce a lot of different things in this country. We import a lot of our produce. If you just talk about tariffs everywhere, which kind of way, then we end up having to pay for it because we don't have the option of doing that free market comparison or having enough options to choose not to pay the tariff. Or if the tariff's on everything, then we have to pay it no matter what. And so that's why it's a problem. Yeah.
And we've also already outsourced a lot of our manufacturing. So you're not protecting U.S. manufacturing if it doesn't exist. If we've already outsourced it to other countries.
Thank you. That's what I was trying to say. I'll use too many words. Thank you, Mark.
How are you guys feeling about these down ballot races? Do you think we're in good shape as far as with the House still? I always worry about the Senate because there's just a lot of going on in different races that I'm not privy to, haven't been really paying attention. I heard Angela also Brooks was doing well, then I heard that she wasn't. So I'm not really following that whole Maryland race. But are you guys feeling like we have a strong enough momentum as a result of her being at the top to trickle down to both the House and Senate, or no?
I think it's not just going to trickle down. I think it's also pushing from the bottom up. I think those, a lot of them are running against lunatics. And I think a lot of those races are going to go blue. They're going to go to the Democrat. I feel like it's going to be a blue tsunami. And
a blue tsunami?
Yeah, a blue tsunami. And I don't think it's just going to be holding the Senate. I think they're going to expand their lead in the Senate to 52, maybe even 53 seats, because I think once we get our turnout, like I said, our base is a lot bigger than theirs. Yeah. Once we get our turnout, anything in the margin is going to roll to the Democrat.
Yeah.
Because you're going to have all of your Gen Zs that are not being factored in any of these polls.
Right.
I
keep saying that. I keep telling people that.
Yeah, they're not in these polls. Once they show up, and again, they have to show up. And they may even drag like some of their millennial friends with them and get them engaged. So once those people show up, anything in the margin is going to go blue. Senate, House, city, state. It's going to be all over the place.
As much as we write them off, they are very much influenced by influencers. You know what I'm saying? If they hear the right person saying it, they will get behind it and do it. They will buy the product. Gen Z is pretty much largely the reason why we have Kamala as our nominee. They wanted someone of relevance, someone that's a little bit more in tune with their way of thinking.
And they were loud AF about it too.
Loud.
Oh yeah.
All over the place, not really knowing how to do this. They were just showing up and volunteering, not knowing what they were volunteering for, but they felt they had been heard. And even now they're still being dismissed, but they're still in the process. So it just kind of bothers me a little bit. Nobody factors that demo into the overall.
You know what's interesting to me? And it may not be a binary switch out, but Gen Z reminds me a lot of Gen X.
Us?
Yes, they remind me of us. Some people say, well, it's because we're raising them, but also this whole kind of I'm gonna keep it up. I'm gonna keep trying. Like we are the feral generation, raised ourselves, latchkey kids, learned how to cook when we were 7,
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. We figured out how to make it work without really knowing how to do a lot of stuff.
That's it.
Our boomer parents were some of the first parents that had to, both parents had to go to work, type of thing, etc. Then you have this millennial generation was kind of disaffected, to some extent raised by the boomers who didn't pay them a lot of attention. We were their older siblings who had to raise ourselves and them to some extent. We figured out what we did wrong, and then had our own children with the Gen Z, who are very, very civic minded, more socialist, not from a economic policy standpoint, but from a community standpoint. They're much more likely to care for their fellow man than the generations that came before them. And to your point, Mark, about the millennials not really being involved in the voting process, I've had a couple of conversations, again, with some millennials who are in their like mid 30s. And we were having this very heated, like really good, deep conversation about some of the ills of society, because we were talking like diversity, inclusion, ills of society and the problems and this and that. We're going back and forth about like history. And he was really well grounded in like an understanding of, he said he follows like history and politics, and he knew all this stuff and something. And then he's like, yeah, I never voted before, but I'm going to vote this time. And I'm sitting here thinking, you fucking 38 years old.
Wow.
What do you mean you've never voted before? I mean, like, I didn't say all that, but I was really like, wow, you just had this whole conversation with me about how much you knew, but you never voted before.
Yeah.
I'm glad he was mobilized to vote now, but that also means you were part of the problem in 2016 and 2020.
Right.
Gen Zers, and I love them, but I think the defining difference between us and Gen Zers is the fact they ask why a whole lot, because a lot of them work under me and they're always asking me why. Whereas us as Gen X, we didn't need to know a why. We just need to know it had to get done. And we'd figure out how we did it. Whereas they would just have to understand a rationale before they would attempt it. But I am encouraged by this whole Gen Z, that demographic, because
I'm not mad at them though. Like,
it's like they're looking.
We wanted to know why. We was just kind of like, I'm not going to ask because I might get fired.
Well, because we never got it. Asking why was a form of talking back in my family.
Yes.
You do it because I told you to do it.
Also, information was a lot harder to come by back then.
Yeah, if it wasn't
you didn't have the internet, you had to go to Encyclopedia Britannica.
Right. Or the Dewey Decimal System.
Oh my God, the Dewey Decimal System.
Which took me a long time to understand, to be honest with you. But no, they call it right there. They can't get the answer. It doesn't set with them. And that's the only thing that sort of kind of like irks me about the whole Gen Z population. And whereas, we're just self-starters, not needing, a justification for getting something done that needs to be done.
Well, let's not denigrate Gen Z. They are very much self-starters. Just the things they start, we may not understand. They got their own hustle and their own vibe. It's very different because they were born into a different life than we were. Their life is different. And some of the questions that they're asking about, why would I do that, is because they don't want to do it, and not because in a lazy way, like I don't want to do it, because there's a level of nihilism in them. What is all of this even for? And so they do challenge that a lot, that I see. But I don't want you to think that I'm like disregarding your point, because you do have some really good points about them, because they are completely different from us.
Oh yeah, they are. I love them. I love the fact that they just push the whole tolerance thing. It's like, no, you're going to accept it. We don't need your tolerance. We're going to accept it.
I had to work with a lot of folks to get them to understand that. Yeah,
they were born into a rigged economy.
Yeah.
We were not born into a rigged economy.
Yeah. We were actually born in peacetime.
Yeah. We were born in peacetime. The economy, you can go to school, you can make a living wage.
A black president is normal for them.
Yeah. Wow. In fact, we were the first generation that kind of needed a 2-income household, but a 2-income household to thrive, not to just survive.
Yeah.
Right. Now they all had to get a job in high school.
Yeah, I mean, and the jobs they're getting are not allowing most of them to thrive. They're just surviving. They're just on that little wheel, just going paycheck to paycheck, wondering if they get sick or if, something happens to the car, everything falls apart. Yeah. And, they've got they've got the student loan debt. Now they're not of college age yet, or are they?
Gen Z is like, yeah, they're getting out of college or just out of college right now, like 23,
Yeah.
24.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, they're looking
Some of
forward.
them are in college, like David Hogg.
Yeah.
But they also grew up at a time when with the school shootings. So guns are a big issue for them. The environment's a big issue for them because they're not inheriting the same environment that we had.
Mhm.
They're not inheriting the same economy. We were the last generation that had the opportunity to buy homes.
Yep.
Millennials
are out here living with their parents still.
And it's not, and it's not about them living in, being like basement dwellers, not wanting to leave. That is just the idea of building and creating generational wealth to pass along. That's just not something most of them will ever. Actually, I shouldn't say ever. In the current situation, in the current system, it's not something that lends itself to that, which is another thing that Kamala Harris identified when she's saying, we're going to deal with the child poverty. We're going to deal with getting uplifting small businesses, and we're going to get young people and first-time home buyers into homes. And that is a life changer. Everything changes when that happens. Your floor elevates.
They are the generation of entrepreneurs, because I got to tell you, they are forever coming up with the hustle.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God, they want to sell everything.
Well, the hustle, it's a form of freedom that wasn't really necessarily available to us. They can hustle because we, as a society, have allowed them to do that. We are buying shit off of Etsy and paying people for pictures of their feet. And
did they create the gig economy? Was that set on them? Gig economy?
Yep.
All right. Okay.
Yep.
And
to that extent, big corporations are getting people on Fiverr to do stuff because they don't want to pay for health insurance and benefits, et cetera, et cetera. They're like, we can gig somebody out to do small projects for us. Then there's somebody on the other end like, I can do 18 gigs at once. Yeah, I might be burnt out, but I made $100,000 this year. And then I get on my trusty Obamacare for a little bit of health insurance and I'm Gucci. And that's how they're living. That's how I'm living. As a matter of fact, I'm an independent contractor. My money is up and down, but my health insurance is on the Affordable Care Act.
Mine is too.
Yeah.
Mine is as well. Yeah.
That's one of the reasons they fought it so bad in the Republican Party is because it did give people freedom to not be chained to a corporation for their physical health.
So much agency because they want us to depend on something. Because the minute you depend on something, they can control you.
There are a lot of Gen Xers because I've met them and I work with them that have their own businesses. When I was selling toilet paper, we used to have people that were like had their own distributorship or had their own business that would come and work for Kimberly-Clark. And I'm like, you had your own business. Why are you applying for a job to work for me or whatever? Because I was a manager in Texas. And they're like, health benefits.
Yeah.
That was the number one reason people would like sell their business and come back into corporate was for health insurance. And then once Obamacare was up, wait, I can just buy my own health insurance. I'm out. And so here we are.
And that's an issue with the unions as well. You talk to the union negotiators and they say every time a contract comes up, virtually the entire conversation is on healthcare benefits. If that is taken away and given to like into a Medicare for all type system, then when they go back in and negotiate, they could start negotiating pay raises and retirement benefits and paid leave and things of that nature. They could start talking about these other things once they remove healthcare as the elephant in the room.
Yeah. And that changes quality of life when you start talking about retirement and paid leave, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this is the subtext to Project 2025, guys. All this is gone as a result of that.
Oh, yeah. Project 2025 is how to enslave the United States.
Exactly. Yeah. So if we can just keep that freaking fire going.
That's what I wanted to say that I forgot that slipped through my fingers earlier is when for everybody that's still listening, or if you clip this at the 1 hour and 49-minute mark and send this to somebody. I know we've been on here forever. Don't try, if you're trying to convince someone to vote either to vote for Kamala Harris, the Harris Walls ticket, or at least not vote for Donald Trump or any of the other third parties, whatever. Get them to read the synopsis, the summary, the cliff notes of Project 2025, because a lot of people either don't know about it, or they think it's not a big deal, or they glibly say, "Oh, Trump is disavowed." There's too much evidence and like video evidence of him saying that he knows those people. They're very good people, talking about how they used to work for him, et cetera, for him to say that he doesn't know what's going on, and then get them to read it. I've even seen this work on those like very dug in like black men that were like never Kamala, and then they're reading Project 25 and they're like, wait, damn, what does it say?
Yeah.
Get people to read that, even if you just send them like some bullet points. This is what the Republican Party is going to push with whoever is their president. Because it's bigger than Trump. If Trump gets in, like I said before, he's going to sign whatever they put in front of him. Even if they get him in just to declare him incompetent and let Vance rise to power as the vice president, named president, whatever, they're going to push that agenda. So we can't really have the Republican Party with the Heritage Foundation as their backer in power anytime soon, because it doesn't matter when they get in, they're going to try to start. They're going to push the button on that project.
Whenever it's a new world order. That's literally what it is.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. And this really explains Elon Musk and Peter Thiel. That's where all their money is going to Trump. A lot of these people, they think Trump is a joke. Yeah. They don't think much of Trump. They want Trump to get in, and then drag them and their agendas into a place where they control. They control the tax code. Mm-hmm. They control the whatever. Elon giving himself government contracts. That's coming.
Absolutely.
He's going to give himself tax cuts. Peter Thiel's going to deregulate the securities industry. Mm-hmm. That's what these people are looking to do, and
that'll destroy the dollar.
And they know there's going to be no pushback from Trump because they know he's an idiot. He started an idiot, and now he's an idiot with dementia.
Yeah, that makes him a blithering idiot, I believe.
I mean, I think once he loses, people are really going to see just how bad he is, because he's going to snap, and then his dementia is going to go from like not 0 to 60, like 60 to 180, like instantly, because the dementia's already there, and it's waiting for that next trigger, and he's just going to completely lose it. He's going to be in an assisted living facility. Yeah. Within probably 2 or 3 years.
He'll be running scared, so he'll be making a whole lot of erratic decisions because he'll just really be scared that he's going to be in prison. I do believe MAGA itself will die. It won't die overnight, but it'll be a quicker death than what I know. But the whole ideology that came with MAGA, those tentacles, that's still going to be around.
Yeah,
the JD Vances of the party.
JD Vance is the son of the devil. Like, he is the Antichrist for sure. Yeah. One of many.
Because they've gotten too close to their quote unquote promise to just back off of it just because they've lost this particular race.
It was kind of like Dick Cheney to W. Bush.
Yeah.
Dick Cheney was the devil in that scenario, and W. Bush was the pushover. Well, now you got JD Vance is the devil, and Trump is the pushover.
Mm-hmm.
That really doesn't care about governance. He just wants the pomp and circumstance. He wants people to respect him, and he wants to, show up to the music and have people cheer for him.
He wants to play at being president. He's
cosplaying president.
Yes.
This engagement that we have, we just got to find a way to keep it going, because there's always going to be some quote unquote fuckery going on.
Yep.
So just because she is the president, we're going to still have to be just as vigilant.
Right.
All the white dudes for Harris is going to have to be white dudes for something else. You know what I'm saying? We're still going to have to still assemble and be in formation, because it's not going to go. It's going to metastasize some other kind of way.
I'm gonna need her. I'm gonna need them to give her some like Kevlar wigs or something all the time, because she's going to be in danger.
Yeah. I don't want her getting out the car. Put it like that.
I mean, look
Yes.
at they've got these groups coming after FEMA. They've
Yeah.
got these vigilante groups coming
They
after.
won't go away.
They're coming after FEMA, so they're trying to help in North Carolina, and they were told they had to stand down because they're in danger.
Yeah. That's wild.
It's just insane to complain. On one hand, you're not taking care of us because we've got a lot of red districts. We're a red state, and then to when the government's trying to, get out there and make people whole, they're standing in the way. There was the story earlier that I believe. I don't remember which one told the story.
I think Tom talked about the guy that died because Trump told him not to apply.
Yeah, that they were going to steal his house. That they were signing over ownership of the house, and that lands with people because there was kind of that like scam where some of these shady contractors would come in and promise like an elderly, a poor elderly family, well, we can get you air conditioning and a new roof and new appliances. You just need to sign over this. And what they've done is they've signed over the house to these people. So
they've been able to co-opt things that are already going on. And
so that already was something that they had heard happening to people because it legitimately was happening. It wasn't happening from government. It was happening from scammers.
Fear will make you irrational, and it all sounds like it could be true, and it preys on people's basest fear of lack of personal safety.
Yep.
Where did Tom go?
Tom had to go, so Tom is gone. When he checked out, he checked all the way out. So
he told us he was going to jump, and then he was gone.
Yeah. So just but all of this misinformation and misleading stuff is exhausting and infuriating. So which behooves everyone who can hear our voices to get some water and a nap, because I need y'all to keep pushing. I need y'all to
keep next week and a half has to be
14
like
days
sprint.
out. Yeah.
And I'm ready.
I really think our ceiling is a good probably 15 points higher than their ceiling. We just need to show up. And if we show up, it's really not going to be close.
It's a wrap.
If you look at these special elections and the midterms, Democrats wildly overperformed the polling. Number one, because the polling was wrong for all the reasons we stated earlier. The shifting demographics of a shrinking baby boomer group, the fact that millennials were being replaced by Gen Z at the lower end of the spectrum.
And so Gen Z is murky. Yeah.
And then you had from 2022 on, you had more female engagement because of the overturning of Roe v. Wade.
Right.
And, I think this election has the ability to be exactly the same, where we overperform. And it's weird because, I'm a progressive. I'm not like a mainstream
like us.
Democrat, but I also identify just like Bernie did, just like AOC and all of these other progressives have identified. Number one, we agree on the most issues. Number two, we have to work together right now because there's an existential threat.
Right.
And if we don't work together, we're all in a lot of trouble. And
yeah.
Exactly. And when you talk, we talked earlier, and I didn't get a chance to respond to this about, how some of the progressives like Jill Stein was just trying to hurt the Democrats. Now, for starters, full disclosure.
I knew you were coming back around to this.
Full disclosure, I've met Jill Stein. I do not dislike her. I like her quite a bit. But the people that she's talking to right now are mostly... when you look back at the old Bernie support, it wasn't all from the left. Bernie was getting right-wing libertarians to support him. Now, those right-wing libertarians have moved back to the right. So when you talk about the peel away from the Sanders coalition, that's who peeled away. So when you see some of these formerly progressive folks like Tulsi Gabbard, she was never a progressive. She was a libertarian. she was with the Sanders coalition as a libertarian. So it did not surprise me when she went home to the right. You listen to some of her words. Yeah, she supported things like Medicare for all. So there are a couple of like progressive policies that really resonate with everybody, where you could say, okay, I see where that would benefit me.
But that doesn't mean they're 100% aligned, right?
Yeah, but then ultimately, a lot of the people who are a lot of the Sanders coalition that peeled away, they were not the lefties. They were mostly the right-wing libertarians that had coalesced behind Sanders. And then when we talk about what cost, and even then, the Jill Stein vote is not what cost Hillary the election.
It contributed.
What's that?
It contributed.
Not really, because Gary Johnson got 3% of the vote. Jill Stein got 1% of the vote. Gary Johnson was the right-wing libertarian.
You know what? That's another case of a woman being demonized for some other problems. Like that, we pick on Jill Stein for that, but she may not have been the biggest issue. But let's also, in the instance of women, let's also not forget the 53% of white women that voted for Trump. They're the ones that handed him that.
Yeah, they voted exactly. They just couldn't wrap their minds around that baggage that Hillary brought to the race. You know, that was just forever a stain.
It goes back to that idea, like they were voting to protect themselves individually and selfishly, because they were approximate to the white male power structure as their wives and daughters, or most wives at that point. And they're like, we're going to vote to keep him in power because he keeps us comfortable.
Yeah, they voted race over gender.
Yeah,
totally.
I believe that as well. But again,
one of the joys that I'm seeing right now, and I'm just glad that Vice President Harris is paying attention to all the mistakes that Hillary Clinton made, all the mishaps, all the oversights.
And Joe,
they're capitalizing on it.
I've said this to Jermaine on the phone a few times. I feel like Kamala Harris has done way more right than she's done wrong.
That's why the pushback.
She's
constantly trying to find holes.
Yeah, I mean, she has learned from previous mistakes, not just Hillary's mistakes, but Biden's mistakes.
Yeah.
And Obama's mistakes.
And Michelle Obama's
mistakes. He made some, but he made some. He made more mistakes, not as a candidate or a speaker, because he was spot on. But when it came to governance, his default position was to go to a moderate right wing, a moderate Republican position, and then try to drag Republicans over there with him.
And they were never going to come.
Right.
Yeah, and they were never going to come. So he may as well have taken a bigger swing, which is what Biden did. Biden took bigger swings, and he got bigger accomplishments.
To the point to where she's incredibly measured as to what she even says. So she comes across a little flat and dull. But it's that discipline that she's maintaining throughout this entire race that reads as if she's not fully there. That reads as she's not exciting enough. That reads as if, she's not giving us enough. It's a very strategic discipline that she's staying on message. And if it comes across as she's being repetitive, I'm sorry it comes across, but it's landing, and she's not making those pitfalls that have, cost us, advancements such as 2016. So
I also like the way she's deploying her surrogates.
Yeah.
Like today, who was it? James Taylor was with Walls. Then Bruce Springsteen was with her. Then yesterday you had Eminem. You had and Eminem.
Do not underestimate that entertainer influence.
It was powerful. Yeah. Where he was like, "Don't let anyone take your voice."
Yeah. And Beyonce is on deck.
Beyonce's on deck. I hear that Michelle is also on deck.
Yeah.
Michelle Obama.
I hear Michelle's about to be deployed. Yeah. So I mean, they're doing a lot right. I wish they would stop talking about Darth Vader, about Dick Cheney. I get he created he create a pathway for Republicans to say okay, but I think a lot of others created that pathway. I think it's okay to take that, but stop bringing it up, because there are a lot of people that when they hear Dick Cheney, they think the Iraq War, the Afghanistan War, torture.
But memories are kind of
in
short.
the
Not
face.
as many people as you think remember that. Not as many. I think they more so remember Liz Cheney, but not necessarily him, because.
But I'll tell you why they're using Dick Cheney. Dick Cheney, for a lot of people, is the poster child of "I'll do anything to win." I'm diehard GOP, and so when the father of the devil was like, "I don't fuck with this dude either," that says a lot.
Yeah.
When evil is like, "You're too evil for me," then they're like, wow, maybe I need to really pay attention. If the guy that we thought was the worst of the worst is like, even I don't want to be this bad, and is distancing himself from Donald Trump, it says it speaks to a certain demographic of maybe I should pay attention. And it speaks to that like 50 and over group that remember Cheney when he was vice president, because the young folks don't even know who he is.
That now there are demographic who are not going to say much. They won't say that they're voting for Kamala, but they're going to do it.
But they followed Cheney his whole career.
Exactly. So that's
now there are plenty of Republicans who are delivering that it's okay to crossover message that I think are better at it. I think
well, perhaps, but he has the marquee. The Cheney
John Kelly.
Yes,
when he
actually haven't been in that cabinet with Trump.
And talking about all the ways where he's a danger and he's a fascist. So talking to the military, and I'm telling you, the military vote is going to Kamala Harris.
Oh God,
that's another group that's not being discussed. The military is going, which was a reliable Republican voting bloc, that is not going to Trump. The only question now is she going to get 55% of that, or is she going to get 60% or 70%? Because now you have all of these military folks coming out going, you do not want Trump as your
commander in chief.
You don't want him to use you as a pawn in his stupid political games, throwing you around on American citizens potentially, because he's talked about that.
And he also doesn't understand doing something for the greater good. He doesn't understand sacrifice, and the military is all about sacrifice.
And he's called all of them losers and suckers.
Yeah, what's in it for them? Yeah.
So I think we need to really keep an eye on that military vote, if they even are tracking it that way. I think that's going to be one of those surprising groups that comes out huge. Now, I don't know if you guys saw this, but just I think it was today or yesterday, the mayor of Waukesha, Wisconsin.
He's a Republican mayor.
He's a Republican mayor in a Republican stronghold in Wisconsin. Came out for Kamala. And he just said, "I can't do it. Trump's a danger."
That's what we're getting a lot is people are like the Republicans, not to invoke the word woke, but Republicans are waking up to the idea of, hey, well, what the fuck? What is happening? We can't do this. Or they're admitting to themselves, look, okay, we had a good run. It was not even fun.
I gambled, but I lost.
But we can't let this go on. Which is Chris Christie started this at the beginning of the 2020 election cycle. How long are we going to let this bullshit go on? Right. And it's so slowly people are like, yeah, we've had enough of this. We can't live this life again,
And I have to know that Cheney opened up that gate just a little bit for them to have the chest to do it. You know, because he gives them cover. I know it rubs you, Mark, but he does, because they're beloved. He's beloved by them. He's just there.
And he's answerable to no one.
Yeah.
But I think you send him out to a Republican audience. You don't talk about him to a Democrat or an independent audience, because a lot of those genocide folks that you're trying to bring over now. Oh, actually, this is another thing.
I think that's a generational thing, because I don't think people are equating him to that. I had to dig back in my mind when you said that. I remember now, but it didn't pop up immediately.
here's the thing about the genocide that I don't think is being discussed enough is the role Donald Trump played in how we even got here.
Right.
He told the Netanyahu and the Israeli government that they didn't need to obey international law regarding
Gaza.
regarding Gaza or the occupied territories. And knowing full well that they were going in and they were being abusive, that they were stealing people's land, that they were denying.
To what he did with his demographic in the United States, he emboldened them to be their worst selves.
Yeah. And then you had Netanyahu, who, I mean, so much of what he has done over the years, he's the one that propped up, take that Israeli conflict all the way back to Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin. He had signed an agreement, a peace treaty for a two-state solution with the Palestinian Authority. We were all ready to make that happen. And then the MAGA version of the Israeli people, the far right-wing Likud folks, had Prime Minister Rabin assassinated. The Likud filled that power vacuum. Netanyahu rose up through that, and he pushed the Palestinian Authority aside and propped up Hamas, knowing full well that they were a terror organization and that they were going to give him ample opportunities to clutch his pearls and play victim and go, they attacked us. Well, of course they attacked you. You did absolutely everything to provoke the attack.
Yeah.
And this is a generation ago that this all began, and people are looking at Kamala Harris right now. What are you going to do about something that started while you were still prosecuted in California? It was your fault. You know, how dare you not fix this overnight? This is extremely entangled. I've made this joke, not a joke, but I've made this reference once before. You know, one of my favorite movies, The Princess Bride. And they even talk about it in The Princess Bride. One of the things you never want to do is get involved in a land war in Asia. And this is a movie back in the 80s. And they're making that reference, you know, something everybody should know is never get involved in a land war in Asia. The other thing is never get involved with a Sicilian when death is on the line and then he falls over dead. And Harold Ramis makes that joke in that movie in like 1989. This has been going on for some people's whole life. Yeah. We're not going to solve it. But the way that America has entangled itself as a country in the goings on in the Middle East, you can't just decide today we're going to do this, because there's so much to unravel. Yeah, and I do believe first of all, I don't think the United States government as an entity has any real interest in unraveling it. But I do think of the two candidates, the only one that would even attempt to try and set it right would be Kamala Harris. Yeah. I don't think Trump is even interested in trying to do anything.
And I don't think Kamala's in a really awkward position right now because she's the vice president. She cannot talk badly about how Biden is handling it. If there's an area of disagreement and they keep trying to pin her, what would you do differently? What would you do differently? What would you do differently? Stop asking her. She can't answer that right now.
And if she did, then she'd be disloyal. Right, what's she going to do when she gets in office? She's not even loyal to her president. Yeah, it'd be a mess.
Because at the end of the day, Joe Biden is the one negotiating a peace treaty right now for a ceasefire. And if she goes and undermines him, then everything gets put on hold and the genocide goes unchecked until the next president. So she cannot undermine anything that he's trying to do. It may not go as far as she's willing to go. And then the other thing people need to understand, and this again is a conversation I have with other progressives, and I'm not sure if they're progressive or they are just progressive on this one issue. I completely lost my, they're like, oh, well, we're arming Israel. First of all, Israel had enough arms without us to do what they're doing to the Palestinian people. They didn't have enough to defend themselves against Iran. But at the end of the day, it's not Joe Biden who sent them those arms. It was Congress. Congress is the only one who could send arms. Congress is the only one that could send foreign aid. And
this is where the
and
lack
it's
of civic
100%
understanding
for,
comes back in. Yeah.
yeah.
People think
And
the
when you
president
look
does
at
everything
who
by
in
himself.
Congress,
I
and when you
was
look at
wondering
who
when
in
you were going to come
Congress was
alive, Mark.
supporting those arms deals, it was mostly it was like the entire Republican Party and then half of the Democratic.
Right.
So
Because who
so
makes
why are
the
the
arms?
Democrats the only ones that have to answer to it when those arms were basically sent there by Republicans?
I was wondering when you were going to come alive, Mark, and you came alive. I was like, give him a little. He's going to take a lot.
I'm sorry. It's just because
It
I
was
know
the
that.
whole Joe Stein thing in the beginning. I said,
But one of the
is going
things
to bring this back, and you did.
Well, one of the things I wanted to do was to really cover the progressive perspective,
Right.
because I felt like that was something I could bring to the table.
I'm glad you did.
And an understanding that a lot of the Sanders folks were not really lefties. They were
not
really
a monolith as far as us.
They're not exactly. They're not monolith, just like the black community.
That's what I'm saying.
Like,
we're not.
well, why do we see black people at Trump rallies?
Yeah.
Well, they have their own reasons for being there.
Yeah.
And they're going to have to tell you what those are.
But on the whole, when you mention progressive on the whole with regards to the culture that I'm a part of, it's a really hard sell on some of the ideas. You know, for the most part, we're moderate Democrats. We are getting to the point to where we're a lot more progressive on our social issues, but that's only as of late. But our fiscal issues, we will always pretty much be a very fine line moderate, sometimes, you know, a little pushy as far as black folks, because we don't have a lot of money to begin with. So we're very, very careful as to how we do spend it. So oftentimes the whole progressive agenda just gets tuned out because it speaks to a way of life that we're not there yet. We're just now getting to where we are, and we're fully comfortable being there, and we're fighting to hold on to it. To go a step beyond that is a reach. Now, maybe this young generation will be a lot more prep for it, but my generation and above, you know, we're happy to be where we are here politically and have the capital that we have politically, because getting here was hard fought. Yeah,
I think you've accepted more of the
agenda. Huh?
I think you've accepted more of the progressive agenda than you realize, because a lot of what we got from Biden was the progressive agenda. You got the infrastructure.
We don't even know what's branded as progressive, to be honest with you. A lot of things we probably, you know, don't even think is progressive. It probably is progressive. But
so Mark, tell us quickly. We don't have a lot of time left, because one thing we've never tested before is how long StreamYard let us stay on here, and I do believe that they're gonna kill us at the 2 hour and 30-minute mark. So we got like 10 minutes left.
Oh yeah, I gotta go bowling.
Progressive agenda.
I'm up against the clock. So you got Medicare for all. So we talked about how that would take that responsibility away from the unions, away from the employers, and move it into taxes, where it bills at about 25 to 30% less than the current system. So there's a saving. You've got the child tax credits, which came from Sanders, was picked up by both Biden and Harris. So you've got that. You've got the infrastructure deal. That was another one. There was the increase in the minimum wage, which, again, it was brought up. It didn't pass because Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema killed it. But Biden was ready to sign it into law. So that's another thing. Kamala Harris also nailed the idea of generational wealth in building, in helping first-time home buyers into a home. So I think a lot of this is the progressive agenda. When she talks about going after price gouging, that's also the progressive agenda. And I love that she's going at it in a different way than anyone else could have brought to the table. It's her as a prosecutor that is going to be the way we go after it, because they already have filed a bunch of those cases. They've already filed the one against the corporate landlords, against the pharmaceutical industry, against some of the food manufacturing.
So maybe a rebranding of what progressivism really is what we need, as opposed to just turning away from it. maybe we need to just call it something else. But I
Yeah,
do know that
Joy
that's a
actually
buzzword.
Joy talked about it earlier too, where she talked about caring about us as a group, uplifting each other. That's really the progressive agenda, and we don't need to call it progressive. The only reason that term even came up is because the Clintons stole the term liberal and applied it to conservatism.
Because once upon a time, the Republican Party was progressive, you know, back around the time they were freeing us. But still, you know, that's about the last time they were. But progressive just means, do you want to see a change
all the
away
way
from the
back to
status
Abe
quo?
Lincoln on that one.
Right.
But they've always appropriated our terms. They did that with woke. Woke was about, just seeing the injustices around us. And all of a sudden they make woke seem like it's just this really far left thing that, that only progressives are all care about. So they all appropriate our terms a lot. So maybe that's what they did with progressive. And that's why we have such a demonization of that word and a turning away from it. So, I agree with you. All the things that she is proposing can be loosely termed as progressive.
Oh, yeah.
But if you label
Samuel,
that progressive, I feel
your,
like people would turn away from it.
I'm going to answer your question. Like, I don't know how people can scream law and order, but don't like Kamala. She is literally the prime candidate for law and order because she's a prosecutor. Most people, when they say law and order, what they really mean is selective control.
Right.
Yes.
They don't really mean law and order.
Agree with that completely.
Yeah.
And
people under the gun. We have like 4 minutes, so we got
right. Final statements, because I do have to shut this down. This has been. I want you to come back, Mark, because this has been a really good conversation, and I do think we need more discussion around the progressive point of view, because at one point I labeled myself like a democratic socialist. At one point I was a nihilist. At one point I was like all this, but I'd like to know more people. I'd like to know more people to know what it truly means to take a progressive stance, because I do think that could not change the minds, but maybe get more people away from the different labels.
Yeah, if you peel away the label and you just talk about the policies, they're all really popular.
And that's what I feel like we should be doing. I feel like there should be a whole rebranding of how we just approach politics, as opposed to just putting a sticker on it.
Absolutely.
And then people judging it based on that sticker that's attached.
And some people are going to peel away. That's just, they're going to do that.
They'll just have to die.
They're just some people are going to peel away because they'll focus on one issue and they'll ignore the other 1,000.
Mark, we love you. You have to come back.
Okay, for sure.
Okay. All right. So everyone, first of all, I want to thank the people that are still with us past the 2-hour mark, because this might be our outside of coverage of the election in real time. Last time, I think this might be our longest show.
Oh, yeah, we did it for the DNC the night she accepted her nomination. That was a long show, too.
That was a long show, too. So I want to thank everybody.
Edit these down into smaller chunks.
Yeah.
Yeah, we usually try to go for like an hour and a half, but we had a lot of good stuff to talk about. And we are winding down. We probably are going to go. We got one more week show, and then we probably will do election night live just to see.
And I'm probably
this is how Jermaine and I our conversations on the phone go.
Yeah, we don't get up to 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm not going and I have to go to work.
For everybody that is having a homecoming at their various colleges and everything, happy homecoming to everybody throughout the rest of the month, early into November. Stay safe, hydrate, because you're getting older, them knees don't do what they used to. And we're going to last quick round robin. Just want to say thank you for everybody for being here tonight. I am Joy Stevens.
I'm Jermaine Taylor.
And I'm Mark Bachner.
And this has been an epic episode of Steel Sharpens Steel.
Progressive style.
Good night.